Hello, hello, and welcome back to our listeners. Jeremiah and myself are here, and today we are talking about some of the worst money advice that we have either heard or received ourselves. And so some of this might resonate with some of our listeners. They may have heard this, they may have shared this advice with other people, but let's see if we can debunk some of the worst money advice.
Yeah, and some of these they're fun. I mean, I like this list of some of the ones that you hear that either got common knowledge, like, oh, everyone does that, or it just doesn't really apply to most people, but you still hear it.
Right,
So yeah,
right.
why don't you lead us off? What's the
All
first
right,
one that
well,
you've heard?
let's kick it off with just live for today and not for tomorrow.
Yeah, it used to be carpe diem, then it turned into YOLO. I mean, it jumps to the idea like have fun now, worry about tomorrow. And there is, in all these, there's some element of truth. Like you can't just put all your money in retirement. There's a lot of life between, 25 years old and retirement. So you can't just push it all away. On the flip side, if you don't start saving now, if you don't make some of the hard choices now, you're never going to have the down payment for your house. You're never going to be able to retire the way you want to. You're never going to put your kids in college. Like all those are realities, and people feel that I'm never going to make it. And we have so many clients that they are shocked when they start doing consistent, healthy habits that allow them to live today, but also plan for tomorrow. Man, they get down the road a couple of years and they say, I'm getting close. I didn't realize this is an option here. This is a life I didn't know I could have. You can't have it in a day. You can't have it overnight, but you can build it with good habits. So yeah, don't forget about tomorrow. It's coming.
Don't forget about tomorrow. This harkens back to, we always talk about kind of budgeting from a bucket perspective. Like enjoy your money while you're earning it, but definitely like put some away for tomorrow and put some away to give away too, because that is the way that our communities are built around the generosity of individuals. So not just living for today and living for yourself, but think about living for tomorrow and also living for others. That should factor into how you think about your finances. Okay, what's the next one?
Second one, debt is always bad. You got to pay it off. You got to get away from it. You got to get. I think debt is dangerous. Debt is also useful. Very few people in America say there was no mortgages, right? You just couldn't take a home mortgage. Almost no one could afford just to buy a house. So it allows people to get into these houses. Same thing for school. How many people can just afford to pay the entire tuition? Debt allows you to have access to things that are going to be useful for your future. But if you have too much debt, that could be very detrimental. The credit cards and things people get overwhelmed with. And we have a lot of clients now that are approaching retirement, and they've got wonderful mortgages, under 3% mortgages. And so we talk about, what could their money be making in the market versus using that money to pay off a mortgage. There's some psychological benefit to being out of debt, and we're all about that. That is wonderful. But there are definite types of debt and seasons of life where debt is a very, very helpful tool to allow you to get to where you're headed. So
right.
Debt depends.
Right. Debt depends. When I think about debt, I think about like the caution tape around it, like proceed with caution. I think also it requires you to be very knowledgeable. Let's talk about the impact of the federal funds rate being reduced. What does that mean for you? The cost of money, right? It becomes less expensive, but it also might mean those CD rates that you're getting are going to drop as well, right? So like understanding the nuances of interest rates, how expensive it is to borrow money in different seasons. We talk a lot to business owners. And oftentimes in order for them to go from point A to point B in this extreme growth phase of their business, it's going to necessitate some lending. And so they need to be smart about how and when they do. There's all sorts of ratios you can look at that are evaluations of health, both from a personal finance perspective and a business finance perspective. So debt, I think of handle with caution. And I also think of age. Like you said, we have clients that have been through seasons within their mortgages. They've been able to refinance. They might now enjoy a very low interest rate on their mortgage. So it doesn't make sense for them to pay it all off because their interest rate and their monthly payment is so low. But if you're young and you're just so eager to get into a home, but you're facing rising interest rates, it might just not be the right time. So be wise, proceed with caution. It's not bad in all circumstances.
Right. And I think with that caution is a little bit of self responsibility. Man, that you can sign paperwork, get credit cards. It used to drive me nuts a little bit when they would say, this is what you qualify for a home mortgage. You qualified for this amount. That has nothing to do with your ability to pay for that or your ability or whether that works into your longer term plan. Just because someone will give it to you doesn't mean that it's the right choice. So a little bit of responsibility and proceed with caution.
Right. Now, I really like this next one. I think it's kind of interesting. It says, always buy the cheapest option.
Right. Eat top ramen, scrimp, save. You got to make those. You hear this on the internet a lot. You got to make these recurring streams of income. So just live really tiny now so you can do this in the future.
Right. If Dad were on the podcast today, I think he would be sharing the story about the gentleman that he had worked with for a few years. And as they finalized kind of his net worth and they were reviewing his net worth, his balance sheet, and he said, you don't know it, but you're a millionaire. And the client's comment was like, oh, I think that means I can buy iced tea now. Like this gentleman, whenever he had gone out to eat throughout his life and he was a millionaire, he had always just got water because he didn't want to spend the extra money on the iced tea. So everybody views money differently. And we've talked before in previous episodes about being a saver or a spender. And sometimes it is really prudent to save your money and buy the cheaper option. Jeremiah and I, when we were early married, we talked about our first trip to Home Depot, and I said, well, let's buy this one because the more expensive one must be better quality. And he said, well, let's buy this one. It's the cheapest and it does what we need it to do, right? So
yeah, you can catch that story. It was about a switch plate cover, right? Like figuring out.
Right. That's when we realized this was going to be harder than we thought it was going to be. But the other topics that come to mind in the season of life that we're in, we're raising young kids right now. Our kids' age ranges are 5 to 12. Now I have a 12-year-old. And so when I think about things like buying a new rug for underneath our dining room table, I made this mistake. This is my true confession on this podcast. We spent not a ton of money, but I bought a nicer rug for underneath our dining room table. It was a beautiful color. It was a lighter color. And I had this like nagging voice in the back of my head, like, but what's going to happen the first time we've got a gaggle of kids in our house and somebody spills their spaghetti sauce? And I just really didn't listen to it. And I bought this nice rug. Do you know what happened within the first week? He knows because not just one, 2 stains on this very nice rug. And do you know where that rug sits?
Right. I think we flipped it within the first week. We flipped the rug backwards already because we said, oh, we got to move that stain to the back.
But I know it's there. And anybody who walks on that end of the table, they also know it's there because you can't miss it. But it still sits there because I'm not ready to invest in a new rug.
Right.
And next time,
well, the same thing with I think rugs. I think it's a great example. Like there's times where you have something beautiful in your home that really brings you joy and wonderful. Great. That's what your money's there. You can use it for things like that. There's also moments or seasons or items to say, hey, this rug, we know it's going to get dirty with our kids and our kids' friends, and we're just going to have this rug for a year. And then we're going to replace it. So let's buy one that we're comfortable replacing it in 1 year as far as that costs. So
right.
You don't have to.
Healthy living is important to you. Sometimes spending more money on more natural care products, like personal care products, right? Shampoo, conditioner, skin. When we talk about our groceries, like if your values align with eating in a certain way, if you have people in your household that have allergies, like that's going to require you to spend more money.
Right.
But you want to make sure that your spending is in your value alignment. I spend more money on coffee unapologetically because I like good quality coffee. So I enjoy it.
It's so good. And I think there's an element on the flip side of this is not living into someone else's life, right? You see it on Instagram, you see it on TikTok, and you say, oh, I want to use those products. I want to eat those foods. I want to be in that type of lifestyle. But you're just not there yet. You're comparing your start to someone else's middle, right? And there's a real element to say, hey, I'm not there yet. I'm here. This is what my budget lives in. But I'm also going to make good quality choices for what fits my life. So it's very personal.
That was like a little hidden principle, like a little, just like the nature of comparison that we all, no matter what age you are, we are all subject to. And looking at somebody else's end or down the road versus your beginning is just not fair. So
yeah, right. So it's the run your own race, do your own thing. All
Love
right.
That. Stay in your lane.
Stay in your lane. This next one, you don't need an emergency fund if you have credit cards. Hey, swipe the card, you'll be fine, you'll cover it. This has stung us a couple of times in life. Not that we were following that, just the reality of you have to have some money set aside because things just happen. So we had I'll tell this story.
And cash is king at the end of the day. Right. Sometimes that becomes extremely critical in your life.
So critical. So we had a moment. No, you're right. We had a moment at our house where our air conditioner went out. It blew out and we needed a new one. And we said, okay, we got to get a new one.
It was like September, which where we live is like triple digits. And I was pregnant,
Yeah.
largely
Yes.
pregnant. So
Yes.
I was really hot.
You were very pregnant. That it was very hot outside. We need to get it fixed, and we didn't have a huge amount of extra money, but we were saying, hey, we could do this. I think it was $4,000 or so was going to be the price, but that price was not to the repair guy who would come and give us a whole new system. It was a friend of a friend who does this commercially and said, oh, I can take care of that. I can get access to these. It was a great deal for us. A normal one would have been much more expensive, but because it was a friend of a friend, it wasn't someone we could just be like, swipe our credit card. They couldn't run it through their business. They didn't have any of that. It was just a, hey, I could do this for you. Just write me a check. And we were in a moment where we had this clear, and then we had to pay a tax thing, and that cleared. And we had to scrape everything we had together and not to be able to get that $4,000 together. And we realized, wow, we need to have this money just sitting there. Even if it doesn't earn interest, even if it feels painful, we need to have that buffer, because we had to reach into longer term investments, longer term plans, and pull those back in moments when it might not have been the best idea, and use that for something immediate. And so credit cards are nice, but they are not everything. And even when you swipe a credit card, that means next month you have to pay your normal expenses plus whatever you just put on there. And that's, I think, how a lot of people get into these debt cycles of, well, I'll just roll it next month. Well, then I got this month and then something else comes up. Man, you want to avoid all that. You want to have an emergency fund. You want to have a buffer. And it doesn't have to be huge, but at first it needs to be $1,000. That's day one, right? You have to get $1,000 in a savings account. That's the Gordon Ramsay process, right? You start there. But for a lot of people's life, to have $5,000, to have $10,000 that is just available in case you have an emergency, that will save you so much sweating, heartache, and having to make bigger moves with your money and messing up some of your long-term plans if you just have that emergency fund.
Right, because it happens to everyone. I mean, the incident that you're referring to about the air conditioner happened before we were officially financial planners, but we had been raised in households that had taught us how to manage our money wisely. I wouldn't have even said at that phase of our life that we were unwise with our money, but we found ourselves in a pickle. So even those who are in the habit of, budgeting and trying to be wise with their spending, you can still find yourself in a pickle like that, where you're up against, a rock and a hard place, and cash is going to be helpful. So keeping that emergency fund is essential. And just kind of a rule of thumb to aspire to is look at your recurring expenses on a monthly basis and try to get at least 3 times that in a savings account before you start to pour over into longer term investments. So
that's great.
There you
That's
go.
great.
All right, ready for the next one?
I'm ready.
Investing is just too risky. Just keep your money in savings.
Yeah, man. If people will have followed this in the last year, say last 12 months, man, would they be feeling the reality of how bad this advice is? Over the last 12 months, so a year or so, the stock market is in the 20% returns, really meaningful returns. Savings, like an actual, like a checking and a savings account, they're still paying 0.01, 0.03, teeny tiny returns. There's still some other options in between those two, but those are kind of the reality. And to say I'm never going to invest, it's too risky, it feels like gambling. People feel that all the time, and that's a real emotion. And we walk our clients through what is investing and long-term approach and prudent and useful, and what is buying crypto because your brother-in-law said it was a great idea. There's a huge difference there. And so getting into investing, whether it's through an advisor, man, that's helpful. Whether it's on your own through something like Robinhood, man, that's useful. But if you've got goals, if you've got visions, if you've got dreams, man, your money needs to work as hard as you do. You're going to work, you're doing all these great things. Your money should be working too. And that doesn't mean that your money needs to be at risk. It doesn't mean you need to, throw caution to the wind. It needs to be prudent. But you need to get that money to work if you're going to reach those goals.
I think that so many of us have this impression when we even say the word investing, automatically those words around gambling come up, or you might even in your head get this visual of those day traders, right? Like on the New York Stock Exchange floor, and the frantic nature of investing. Now, does that exist? Yes, it does. But there are different styles of investing. And so the style of work that we do here is we're not out there day trading. We're not using, different, let's say, riskier investment styles, because what we're asking people to do is really to entrust us with their nest egg. And so we take a very steady approach to investing, a less active style of investing, where we set a goal, we set an asset allocation, we set a target rate of return over the long term, but we review the risk associated. And risk is, what roller coaster are you riding? You know, if you're in just like Toontown at Disneyland and we're just going around the merry-go-round, that's totally fine. But let's make sure that your money is at least keeping up with inflation. And in these seasons where there's such high growth, let's not miss out on the portion of that growth where your money could be working for you. So
That's great. That's great. I think this dovetails really nicely in the next one. You should only invest in what you know. Man, there is some people who have said this, and this is not bad. It probably comes from Warren Buffett, I think. Warren Buffett, invested in
picks his
companies.
favorites.
He did a deep dive into, he always does this deep dive into these companies. He understands the companies and he invests in companies he likes. He likes, years past, he's like railroads. He drinks a cherry Coke. He has some real, constant things that he really enjoys. And so I think people will start investing at times in the things that are close to them, like retail. Like I eat at Chipotle. I see a line at the door. I'm going to buy their stock. I go to Target. I think Target is great. I'm going to buy their stock. That's not the
Or
worst.
someone that they've been employed by or are currently employed by. Like, I believe in this company. I'm a part of this company. If it's a public corporation, it might be a stock that they really want to hang on to for a long time.
That's right. And not bad options, but there are more. I mean, how many people 8 years ago knew about NVIDIA, right? NVIDIA has been in the best stocks and it's a household name now, but it wasn't, pre the AI kind of revolution. It wasn't a few years ago. And so people who are only looking on the consumer side, the things that they know about, they're really missing, one, some diversity. You got to spread that around. But two, there's some great companies out there that are not like NVIDIA being one. It's not retail focused. It's not selling to consumers. It's making a product that goes into either your computer or into some server somewhere. So there's a lot of great companies out there, and that's part of bringing in a professional. That's part of going through funds rather than just like picking individual stocks. You can get these exchange traded funds, ETFs, very low fees, and they give you this broad exposure to multiple companies. And there are times when you read through it and you're like, I don't know half of these companies. Well, that's not bad. That doesn't mean you made a bad investment. That just means that some of those companies may need some more due diligence. You might need to look into those further. But sticking with with what you know can be great. But also, I think, cuts against the idea of diversity. And I'm not Warren Buffett. You're not Warren Buffett. Only Warren Buffett is Warren Buffett, right? There's some principles we can learn from him, but don't try and copy him without doing all the work and the legwork that he did.
Right. And the paradigm shift is the mindset is like, I'm going to pick what I know because that feels safer. But actually, when you only pick a few stocks of companies that you're lacking in diversification. And the more diversified your portfolio is, the lower your risk actually becomes. So it doesn't mean that you can't hold these companies that you know so well. It's let's make sure we hold it within some sort of, we love to work with ETFs. So these are large baskets of funds that hold multiple different holdings inside of them. So diversification is key to lower your risk. So don't forget that.
Don't forget it.
All right. Here's our next one. You can always save later.
Yep. It's a hard season. We're just in a moment right now. I got to get through this. We got the kids. We'll work on retirement later, right? And the truth of that is, yeah, you can. If you have urgent needs that you have to use your money for, you have to use your money for it. The hard part and the tricky or the sneaky part about that statement is, man, is it harder later? What would have been $100 a month, $100 a paycheck, that's not easy, right? But it might be doable. But when you don't do that and you get down the road a few years, now you're looking at $500 a paycheck. That is different. $1,000 a paycheck, like that is insurmountable to some people. And so the idea of retirement, the idea of saving for a future house, all the different goals that you might have, you got to start early. And we tell a lot of people when they talk about, a lot of clients we talk about this with, if they want to buy a house, they want to pay for college, they want to retire, right? 3 different goals. It's not a first this, then that, and we'll wait till we get to retirement. It's usually a both and. We need to build a plan that knows the timing of these goals, but also starts making progress on all of them today. And so that's a hard one. I think that there's times in life where we have stopped contributing to our retirement plans. We just said, hey, this is a season. We're going to pause this and we'll do it later. But anytime you do something like that, you have to be so desperate to get back to your long-term plan, right? It is not good to delay those plans. Delaying your actions towards your goals is much more than you really anticipate. Delaying those goals and just pushing them way out.
As much as this might make our listeners uncomfortable, this one I really relate to in terms of getting to the gym. I'll get to the gym later. Well, you know what? That backache that you've been having because you're sitting in your chair for so many hours a day, it's not going to get any better. And
Yep.
so by just showing up to the gym on day one, you're probably not going to be doing something on day one that you might be doing years down the road, but you're starting somewhere. And ultimately, savings is a habit. And the way that bank accounts work now, you can set up these automatic transfers into different accounts. So the savings can come out and you don't even look at it, and you reset your budget. So help yourself. Use technology to help you manage your money and organize it and create a habit that you might actually not be so in tune with or aware of on a monthly basis, but set it up in a strong moment where this is a principle that I want to live by. I do want to save my money, and start to organize your money. So use technology to help you that do start now, because those issues that, 5 pounds that I gained, it's only going to turn into 10 pounds later. Like, you got to start somewhere.
Start somewhere. There's a great comment I saw on social media that said, you go to the gym once, nobody cares. You go to the gym 100 days in a row, you're practically a new person. I thought that was a great comment because it had nothing to do with, because everything is going to filter that, right? I put $5 in my savings account. Did it even matter? I went to the gym once. Didn't even matter. All I do is feel sore the next day, right? But when you can turn that into a habit, man, there can be so much difference coming down the
Right.
line.
And it builds confidence, right? Like, making a commitment and sticking to it actually builds confidence for the next hard thing that comes up in life. You say, yeah, but I can do that hard thing. I think I can do this hard thing. So
I
you
love
can
it.
just sprinkle all these wonderful
I know,
principles
little
throughout
tidbits.
this.
All right, next one. Financial independence means you have to be rich.
This one I think is really interesting because it begs this definition of, what does financial freedom mean? And when I think of financial freedom, I think of these literal circumstances where we're sitting down with clients and we're communicating with them the decisions that they're able to make because they've been good stewards with their money. You don't have to be strapped to that job that you hate because you've been faithful and diligent about savings, or you have, this investment growth that you've had in your account. But we can look over the long term and say, if you keep up these habits, these are the freedom, these are the choices that you get to make. And that relief on their face, right? That's financial freedom. So that doesn't always come with wealth. It doesn't always come with making more. Financial freedom is born from being able to do the things that you want to do, and your finances support.
Yep. That's so great. I love that. We had a client I met with earlier this week that they don't have large accounts. They have a decent pension. They have decent accounts, and they have wonderful relationships with their families. And we were talking about wealth and what that looks like. And man, they feel exceedingly wealthy. They have enough for their lifestyle. They're doing all the things that they feel they want to do. They don't want to go to Italy. They don't want to do these other things. They have full freedom to do all the things they dream about doing. They're doing, and they get to do it with it. He was making the comment that his grandson comes over every other weekend. And he's an adult grandson that comes over every other weekend. And there's a golf course nearby. They do different things together. And he is living in the wealth of family and the wealth of having enough and not worrying about, I need more. And it is, I guess not many people get to tell other people this, but to be able to sit down with someone and say, hey, you have passed the point of financial freedom. From this point forward, you can do anything you want as far as work or not work or go here or go there. And your finances are going to support that. Man, that's an honor to get to walk into people and tell them that. But that does not happen by accident. It's people who have been diligent on their mortgages. They've been diligent on their savings goals. They've been diligent in all this stuff. So financial freedom, and especially here where we're at, Southern California, we're inland a bit. And I would say the bulk of our clients, if you saw them on the street, you would not think, oh, there's a wealthy person. Oh, there's that Ferrari going by. They are good people, good, normal, hardworking people. And when you walk by them, you would have no idea that they're walking all these multimillionaires. You're just walking by, but they've been diligent. They're not flashy. They're not fancy, but they are confident. They have peace about their finances. And to me, that's so much more valuable than being quote unquote rich, however you define that. So
right. And that's what I love about this job, is that we're not out to make every single one of our clients billionaires. That's not our goal, right? Every scenario is unique. Our goal is to identify what their vision is, what are their key values, their core values, what is it that they want out of life? Let's make your finances support that. It's building an infrastructure around that. And that's the definition of financial freedom. It's actually unique for every situation. So, well, we hope that some of this has been helpful to our listeners. There is bad money advice out there, and there is good money advice. And if you're wondering which one you're listening to, give us a call. Jeremiah and I are here to help and help to differentiate the good from the bad. Thanks so much for listening.
Thanks so much for listening.
We have a few more things to let you know about before we go. Podcast reviews really help us to serve more people and get this information into the hands of the people who need it. Please leave us a review. Even if it's not 5 stars, we welcome the feedback.
And we invite you to let us know what topics you would like to hear more about or what would benefit the people in your life who you're closest to. We have more resources online. Those resources are designed to help you share this great information easily with people in your life. To access those resources, please visit trichordadvisors.com.
Often we hear from clients that they wish they had talked to us sooner. If that's you, we'd be thrilled to see how financial planning can benefit your life. Email us at contact@trichordadvisors.com or simply click on the link in the show notes.
This show is produced by Graham Gardner at Model FA. Find out more about how to create a podcast for your financial planning business by visiting modelfa.com. We love creating content that's useful, resourceful, and maybe even a little entertaining. We want to make this mega universe of financial topics and advice applicable and helpful to your life.
Remember, at Trichord Advisors, we are your future's best ally.